on this in a row. And if you will keep up with the notes, and this is the way I've entitled this message tonight. Notes on Jethro. You know who Jethro was? Well, I don't think you do. It seems there was a man named Jethro, who also had a name that was different than Jethro. And he wore that name also. His name was Ruel. But he also had another name that was different than Jethro and Ruel. And his name was Habab. And his name was also, where did he have all these names? He had 7 of them. What we find out is that Jethro is a title. It's not the name of an individual. It was a title. Like king or Pharaoh. His individual name was Ruel. Ruel means the friend of God. To Jethro, there was attributed a judicial system that a lot of people have never considered. This testifies to the antiquity that had produced an office which later became known as elders. Jethro was a component which appeared in many Semitic and was used as an exceedingly wise man. This is the name of the old Babylonian flood hero in the story amongst the Babylonians. If you've read that account. Jethro seemed to be one of Pharaoh's counselors. And accordingly with Amalek as his aide, he was the man who gave counsel to destroy the Israelite children to Pharaoh, of which he later repented. If you read in Exodus 27 and 6. His fellow counselors were said to be those who were a part of this group of men who counseled Pharaoh, of which was our man Job. He was advocating the destruction of the children of Israel. And when he advocated that destruction, it is said that Job remained silent. And so because Jethro had took a stand, he fled to Midian. Jethro was not a follower of the Almighty God. But he became a convert to Judaism when he heard by the mouth of Moses all that God had done to deliver Israel from Egyptian bondage. And when he heard of the stories of miracles that were performed by Moses and the crossing of the Red Sea, Jethro or Ruel or Hobab or Pastua, and there's 5 or 6 other names that I can give you, became an immediate convert because of the facts that he heard. Having had been an idol worshiper, Jethro had been raised amongst those who had the covenants and practices of the ancient people long before Abraham, long before his existence here on the earth. But when he took a stand against that was wrong, Jethro's neighbors excommunicated him. And for that reason, we understand that Jethro's daughters had to tend his sheep. Jethro was the first man after he'd heard the story of God and the realization of Moses, who by the way became Jethro's father-in-law. When Moses had killed an Egyptian and fled to Midian, Jethro had taken in. Jethro, having heard the story of God, was the first to praise Jehovah in the aspect of the blessings that he had brought to the children of Israel. It is interesting that before this conversation, none of the Jews had showed acclamation to God for what God had done for them. Jethro being the first, it would be like making the good confession
that Moses and the children of Israel had never gotten around to.
Where 600,000 Israelites
had been blessed by the Lord,
and nobody had ever brought honor and
glory
to God in that behalf.
It's important to note that when Jethro came
with Moses' wife
to Mount Sinai,
he immediately was met by
the honorary committee
of all of those who were amongst Israel of that day.
Moses,
Aaron,
and the two sons,
Nadab and Abihu,
but more particularly
the
70 elders
of Israel.
All of this took place.
And Jethro left town,
or that area,
before the covenant was given to Moses by God
on Mount Sinai.
Now I'm building up to a story that a lot of people have never heard of.
They've heard of it.
They've never connected.
Not having connected it,
they've never read it.
They've never
in
read
the sense
it.
Of the light of understanding
that it gives.
But it's interesting to note that the first definition of what we now commonly call elders
described a function
that Ruel,
Jethro,
Hobab, Kenite,
4 or 5 other names
that belonged to this man,
had never used.
You've heard of the Druids?
They were the one that
have the Stonehenge
in England.
This goes back to their period of time, and still remain in England.
People don't know what all that's about.
It was all for.
Tradition tells us
that they set up grave sites
to signify that
their religion had been there,
and they wanted people to listen
and know.
But in Deuteronomy 1,
9 through 17,
God introduces us and gives us
the definition
of the ancient order
called elders.
The ancient Hebrew word is Rosh.
It means ruler,
priest,
or leader.
It was so that when Moses was
listening
to the complaint of the children of Israel,
that having been in his presence
and bringing Zipporah
and his two sons
to
reunite them
with Moses,
to be honest with you,
Moses and Zipporah
was said to have divorced.
When they came to be
Moses brought by Jethro
to be there,
the next day
Moses had a time when he was setting out amongst
Israel in the complaint department.
As Jethro stood there and watched and listened,
Jethro went up to Moses
and said, "You do these people wrong.
What are you doing?
You have to do something
to help the situation because
it's going to kill you.
It's going to kill you,
and it's going to wear them out
to where they'll never
ever come for help again." So Jethro explained to Moses
a system
that had been in
the annals
of time
that had been used by all those from Adam
all the way down to Abraham.
That had not been explained.
It was
just always used.
And everybody took it for granted.
Of course, the children of Israel
coming from Egyptian bondage
hadn't had that background or information.
And not being a people
who were on their own,
had no way to
determine how to govern themselves.
So Jethro comes
and he says,
you got to find
some people that fit
this qualification.
Now, if you go to Deuteronomy,
I believe it's the 19th chapter,
you will find.
Let me look that up.
I think Bobby read that.
But if you go to Deuteronomy 19,
you will find one of the best
explanations of leadership,
eldership
that you have ever read.
It establishes a premise and a basis
for something some of our brethren have never comprehended,
and because they haven't comprehended it,
they've misconstrued.
what we are doing. When we talk about a function that they think just all of a sudden showed up in the New Testament church. But all the years I've been studying the Scriptures, I've seen that there was an eldership in Israel. I've never heard of anybody that said anything about it. And because of that, I've not seen anybody explain what God had done as a practice that had been established. Jethro said you gotta find some men you can trust. You gotta find some men who respect God. You've got to find men who will not change their decisions because of money. These men will then be the judges over the people. But if the problem is too delicate, they'll come to a higher authority, which is the evangelist or teacher or prophet amongst them. Look at Exodus. The 18th chapter. I'm sure it's not where I was looking. So let's go to 18th chapter. I think we'll find it. I want to read this to you. If I've never heard a good example of qualifications to be in the cause of Christ, this is it. Look at verse 19. Hearken now unto my voice, and I'll give thee counsel. This Jethro, our Ruel, our Hobab, our Patil, our Kenite, all of those mean something and a function that he performed. And there were seven of them. He said, "Let me give you this counsel. And God shall be with thee. Be thou for the people to God word, or you show them the way of God, that thou mayest bring the causes unto God. And thou shalt teach them ordinances and laws, and shalt show them the way. You will be their leader. You will be their example. You will be the exact definition of a priest or an elder. That should be wherein they must walk. And the work that they must do. Moreover, thou shalt provide out of all the people able men, such as are righteous, such as are men of God, men of truth, hating covetousness, changing their mind because of money, and place such over the children of Israel to be rulers of thousands, and rulers of hundreds, and rulers of 50, and rulers of 50, and rulers of tens, and let them judge. This word means to lead and direct by example, in kindness and wisdom. And let them judge the people at all seasons. And it shall be that every great matter they shall bring unto thee, but every small matter they shall judge. So it'll be easier for thyself, and they shall bear the burden with thee. If thou wilt do this thing, and God command thee so, then thou shalt be able to endure. And all this people shall also go to their place in peace. So Moses hearkened to the voice of his father-in-law, and did all that he had said. And Moses chose able men out of all Israel, and he made them heads, rulers, priests, elders, over the people, rulers of thousands, rulers of hundreds, rulers of fifties, and rulers of tens. And they judged the people at all seasons. The hard causes they brought into Moses, but every small matter they judged themselves. And Moses let his father-in-law depart, and he went his way into his own land. The definition of these men seemed to set a precedent, or a prerequisite that we've not paid attention to. They who had the ability to be trusted. Those who respected God. Men who would not change for covetousness, change their decisions because when they told their wife what was discussed, and when they came back to the next meeting of the men, they had to change it because their wife corrected them. These were men who would be judges. leaders, examples, righteous men, that the people would follow. And they would deal in most of the matters, those of extreme importance, to which then they would take it to a higher authority. Of all the good that we tell people, of the dynamic leadership of the Church of Christ and the Gospel of Christ. What we have presented is not what is established by a pattern that was met by the approval of God and the ordination of God amongst people before Abraham or the children of Israel ever came into existence. Folks, if you will read about the nations of the world who self-govern, who are not under control of some socialistic, communistic, rigid form of government. All of these peoples in Africa, Asia, Europe, and South America, seemingly never met each other, and have no agreement or understanding, have the same type and form of government. Now there's some famous people that were said to be elders that have never been reckoned in the Old Testament. One was Lot. He said in the gates. And that's where the elders sat. One of another that you know real well was Naomi's husband, who was also an elder in Israel. Who sat at the case and decided on the things concerning the judgment of his people. Another by the name of Jesse. And all of these people had this function, and it was well known and established in the world because everybody did it that way. You see. These were men who were over communities that was greater than a regular family, an extended family, a greater than extended family, and then a nation of families. Isn't this exactly what Jethro explained to Moses? You have men over 10,000, thousands, hundreds, and ten. This is not something new. It's always been in the history of the world. Anytime that you can find people or a nation that self-govern themselves, it doesn't matter if they claim to be religious. This, my friend, is a social order. It is something that was established to keep the family a family. It was something that preceded welfare. That preceded the Church of Christ in existence on the earth. That preceded the nation of Israel that was coming about. That preceded Abraham when he lived in the Ur of the Chaldees. That preceded all of these people, and it existed and functioned. And it wasn't something that just came about as a structure in the Church of Christ. That's the reason Paul sent Titus and Timothy to the churches and established this kind of order and system, so that as families we could get to be larger families, and as larger families they would even be greater. And I've often thought and discussed this with some people. Other people I didn't think much time to discuss it with them because they've got to get an understanding of what's going on. But I've often thought we're in a New Testament church. We have men who were heads of thousands and hundred thousands, of which there was no capacity shown or given, and no relevance ever stated why they existed. One of the strongest of these was James, the half brother of Jesus. To whom apostles came for advice and fellowship. To whom Paul brought all the money to be distributed that he had requested the Gentile congregations he started. Men of great righteousness and strength. The Roman Catholic Church unfortunately has tried to set these up as bishops and cardinals and popes. Friend, the Roman Catholic Church didn't come into existence until about 313 AD. We're talking about things that existed 5,000 years before the Church of Christ came to the earth. And we think it's something new. And when we talk about leaders and counselors and wisdom and understanding, we're told by the Apostle Paul that this still exists and it should be followed in the Lord's church. Follow the leader, the ruler that is among you, who's taught you the truth. For they watch for your soul, that they may do it with joy and not with grief. Now the eldership is not something new. It's just like unleavened bread. You know where we got the unleavened bread? You say, well, from the law of Moses. First place I saw it. It came right into the Church of Christ because the Lord brought it in. It's like a lot of things that we do in the worship service. Do you know where we get the raised pulpit? Do you know where we get? So many things that we have that have come in from the Old Testament that we've ignored and overlooked, thinking we've invented a new wheel when it was already working before we ever were heard of on the earth. And we need to understand these things. So when we talk about the works of the Lord and the church that He established, and we see circumstances and situations come about. They're not new. They just didn't start up. And I guess I think you should know also that didn't seem like Paul ever sent Titus or Timothy to congregations that were totally Jewish. Because they just followed the practice of the Old Testament, from before the Old Testament, from immediately after the flood, and on. So we got a lot of things to learn, a lot of things to study. And as you do that, we're not trying to hurt anybody else. We're just trying to explain what is, and that it was a social thing. Now, Moses was the one who figured the hardest decisions. James was the one whom the church went to in Jerusalem. They didn't go to Paul. They didn't go to Peter. They didn't go to Barnabas. They went to James. And it was James that wrote the edict. Where is there a James among us today? And why is it that he's not there? When we claim that the eldership is there to do what James was supposed to have done. Think of these things. If you're hearing subject to the invitation of the gospel, Jesus said, "He that believeth and is baptized shall be saved. He that believeth not shall be damned." If you would like to obey the gospel, as we stand and sing the invitation, will you come?